Governor John Hickenlooper was inaugurated for his second term on Tuesday, and former Governor Roy Romer used the occasion to urge him to lead an effort to repeal the TABOR amendment. While Hickenlooper brought up the ramifications of a TABOR refund in his State of the State address, he did not openly comment that the law should be repealed. Patty, it seemed that for his second inauguration, Roy Romer gave John Hickenlooper a big fat Pandora's box to open as a present. It hasn't got a lot of press. Let's stick with this. We'll talk about the rest of the address, but specifically on this point, do you think at any point John Hickenlooper is going to pick up the mantle to lead a movement as Roy Romer encouraged him to do so?
I would think that behind the scenes he is working with other people who will lead the way, but he will support them because he talked at his speech, his inauguration speech, he talked about the financial thicket Colorado is in because of the TABOR amendment. He talked about the fact that you can't grow while you're shrinking. But he also has said that he likes the idea of citizens being able to vote for tax increases, which was the basic tenet of the TABOR, the so-called TABOR amendment, as the Denver Post calls it, but it is actually the TABOR amendment. That's what Coloradans voted for in 1992. The problem is there were some ramifications held within that, the so-called, no, this is the one, the so-called ratchet effect that does put the state in a bind with the budget. There are ways that the TABOR amendment can be changed, can be fixed, still allowing people to vote, but fixing some of those other problems. There's also the Gallagher Amendment, which people have talked periodically about fixing. So there is a financial thicket that I think Hickenlooper will take on because the next governor will inherit it, even if Hickenlooper somehow dodges really big budget problems in the next 4 years. Was pretty funny, though, to hear all the different pieces of advice the 3 former governors who attended his inauguration party gave. You know, Lamb is talking about, think about what you're going to do 4 years from now when you go off in the world. And then Romer just came right out and said, fix TABOR. That's it. Do it. So,
David, I know I was surprised by Roy Romer recommending to lead a movement. It's one thing to say, I think Pat's absolutely right, to urge for a vote to keep a refund. That's what TABOR's built for. If you want to keep the money as a government, ask the voters to do so. Tell them what you're going to spend it on. Colorado has done it before, and by cities, we've done it quite often. But to lead a movement to repeal the entire thing, that is quite a windmill to be tilting at. What do you think?
Well, Governor Romer, when he was governor, led the movement against the enactment of the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, which is its formal name, and the people rejected his arguments because they were so implausible. He described Douglas Bruce, who's not the smoothest fellow in the state, as a terrorist who would lob a hand grenade into a schoolyard full of children. He said that defeating the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights proposed amendment was the moral equivalent of defeating the Nazis at the Battle of the Bulge. He predicted that there would be an economic Armageddon in the state, and that the signs would be posted to the state line saying Colorado is closed for business. If you compare actually that versus reality, the 12 years before the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights went into effect and then the period after, Colorado's economic ranking among the states improved dramatically. Per capita income growth, and economic growth, Colorado zoomed from a mediocre level to being one of the best states. Now, maybe the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights didn't cause all of that, but it was certainly the opposite of the ridiculous scenarios provided by Governor Romer.
Ed, as our Capitol reporter here at the table, I've met enough of our elected leaders without the cameras being turned on, from both sides of the aisle, that will say, yes, TABOR does make it more difficult to govern. But when the cameras are on and they have to speak publicly about it, there's not a whole lot of Republicans that want to get rid of it. Maybe adjust, maybe play with it. They may go there, but probably not. Are Democrats excited about this idea? Are there more people at the Capitol besides Roy Romer that want Hickenlooper to pick up this fight?
You know, I think that, going back to what Patty said, it's 2 different fights. If you tell people, I want to get rid of TABOR, people are going to raise their hackles because they're going to say, well, you're just going to raise taxes on me. If you tell people, I would like to get rid of some of the recessive effects of the growth of revenue and how that affects our future years planning, and when we go into a recession, how we can't bounce back as much, well, then people's eyes roll back in their heads. So that's the trick, is that you have to be able to iterate. And there are a few people who want to get rid of the whole thing. In fact, they're involved in a lawsuit right now. But for the most part, people who want to change Tabor want to change that second part. And you really have to sit down with a long conversation with the public about what that means. And the question is, are there people who want to do that conversation? Is this the top priority, which is what it's really going to take if anyone wants to change some of Tabor's more arcane provisions to make it the focal conversation among state residents? That's how you're going to get it passed. Otherwise, people love to go to the ballot and vote no on pretty much anything. So I think what you need is a time when there's a good economy, when there's not much else going on, when people can focus on this. I'm not sure that the economy is improving, but I'm not sure we're at the point where this is going to be a laser focus just yet. And I'm pretty sure that Hickenlooper has other things he wants to do rather than spend his next 4 years on this alone.
Right. Gloria, one of the great points that Ed just brought up was the people involved, the voters. What do you think their impression of all this going down, whether it's Roy Romer's comments or just the people talking about refunds, what do you think?
I'll tell you what I think is, to his point, it's confusing. So, and you couple that with all the other things you have to deal with on a daily basis, and the economy isn't good. And you look at, okay, if all things have to be at least equal in order for somebody to come and sit down and explain it to me, and I get it and understand it, because Tabor is convoluted. I mean, there's some pieces where it's like, what? We can't take the money and use it for what we want to use it for. It does make it tough to govern. So for Joe and Joette Schmo, they look and they say, there has got to be a way we can take the red tape out of this and use this for education and use this for fill in the blank. Otherwise, why do we do it in the first place? A lot of times when I'm thinking about Tabor, I think, oh, that's right. It reminds me of that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because it started out good, sounds really good, but it really has tied the hands of government to do some very good things for some entities that need a lot of help.
Okay.